Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning, this Matt.
This is Jesse.
And as usual, there's always chaos and hate and discontent going on our end. And this will be round two of us trying to remember to click everything to get it going.
At
Speak,
least we didn't go for an hour and a half and realize we never hit the record button this time.
there is that.
Yeah.
So, speaking of chaos and likes and clicks, if you ever have a comment, concern, issue, statement, or litigation, you can search us out at ittasteslikeburningcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at ITLBcast. If you're feeling froggy, you can give us a support there on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning Cast. We'll shoot you stickers. And what we're really hunting after is likes, clicks, subscribes, reminders there on and reviews on all platforms and everything that we've mentioned.
Yeah, totally. And we need to get that YouTube channel we need some subscribers there. We need to get that thing going. We've got something coming up in June that we've been alluding to. And that thing is we're going to be presenting at the Texas State Firemen Fire Marshals Association annual conference with a live podcast. So if you've ever wanted to come see the podcast live, that is the opportunity right there. That is the sole and only opportunity for a live studio audience, right?
Right. And I'm also available for booking for any sort of modeling events that you have readily available
Yeah.
or needs of.
So with all that, we're trying to get that to a point to where it's ability to be monetized, right? So that we can actually maybe get a nickel back on this deal. There's been a lot of expense to go from audio only to video. We truly haven't figured this out yet, but we've got a few months, right? And we've got people willing to help us. So we're going to make it happen. It's going to be on YouTube live. So you'll see it when it's happening. If you're in Kansas and you want to see what's going on, like that's going to be the opportunity to be a part of it, and see what we have to offer on that deal.
Do you know if it's YouTube live or just live and we haven't determined the site yet?
Well, I think the whole deal with getting the YouTube built up is to do it on YouTube as a YouTube live. Um, there's also the possibility it may eke out there on a few other platforms, whether that be Facebook or something like that. But the real goal is to get it on the YouTube and get that super chat enabled to where we can take those super chats and maybe fund the party a little bit. It was never about making a dollar on this deal, but the whole premise is this costs a lot of money,
Thank
right?
God, because if our premonition was profit, then we've got much further to go.
Yeah, we have invested far more than we've gotten out of it monetarily. Now, I'd argue that what we've gotten out of it, just in a general sense of knowledge and I, it's not followers that's not the answer. It's the conversation, right?
For me, it's the contacts, it's the conversation, it's the contacts, it's our ability to just network. Um, I have no problem looking stupid. I have no problem asking stupid questions. Because at the end of the day, the only thing I care about is the betterment of the organization and how do I take anything and everything out there and begin to remotely use it to our benefit.
Yeah. And one of the key things, and that's a good segue, Matt. One of the key things that we have to look at, and any organization has to look at, is how you approach these problems, right? And
Right.
if you're going head first into the wall, and the premise is the wall's not moving, and I'm gonna lose, right? You're gonna lose, right? Henry Ford always said the famous Henry Ford quote is, "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably correct," right?
Right.
And I agree with that 100%. And I look at it from the aspect of, if I go into this thinking that it's going to be a failure, it's going to be a failure. And if I look at it going from the perspective that I'm going to do the best I can, we're going to take it as far as we can take it. And if it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, we're going to learn what we need to do different.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. And not just it can't, it won't, we'll never. What are all those sayings, Matt? There's 100
Right.
of them,
Well,
right?
and that's kind of the premise of today is can't not, want not, should not, want
Shout.
not, you know. And at the end of the day, in the last, let's call it month, but really it's in my entire volunteer career is there's I'm going to call it a mindset, but the mindset spoken. There's certain things that if it's a mantra or a common theme in the organization, what you're going to find is it's not a common theme in the organization. It's one person that just happens to be vocal, and it's we tried that. We we can't do that. It's too far. It's too much. It's no one will do that. And what I'm saying is that that's how you kill your organization. The second that you start resigning yourself to, nope, we did that in 1961 and it didn't work, so it's not going to work today. Or we tried that in 1937 and it didn't work, so it's not going to work today. Or that's too far of a distance to go for training or to meet with those people. It's not going to work. Or it's any line that is quite frankly rhetorical of dinosaurs is can't not, want not, shall not.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's your department's attitude towards we can't do this because it's hard, or we can't do this because it's too far, or we can't do this because we tried it 83 years ago. Ah, okay. Be resigned to your miserable suffering.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we've tried it before, let's just dive down that rabbit hole, right? So you tried it before, but one person made a half-ass attempt at making whatever happen. And at best it was half-assed. And is that truly what you're going to measure everything off of? Is that, made a half-ass attempt to do one thing that didn't work because we sort of tried, right? We talked about it once, and we didn't. There's some teamwork makes the dream work right there. But we talked about it once. We kind of halfway did something about what, no matter what it is, whether it's fundraising, recruiting, uh, whatever. It it's that half-ass attempt's what gets you most of the time, and it really doesn't take everybody going just full on out on a specific thing to make it succeed. It takes a couple of people to go full on out, and everybody else has to kind of be behind it, right?
Yeah, well, I think the problem is that we'll just say said idea. Um, and this is just for an instance, but let's just pretend that the said idea is this other department does this one thing real well. We're going to go travel to them and do a day together of training. But they are an hour away. And the first statement that's stated is that's too far. Okay, 2 hours, too far. 6 hours, too far. Here's a concept. Who's willing to go that far?
Well, I think I am, as long as there's something to be gained from it, right? Some knowledge, some perspective, something that's going to make that time worthwhile. I'm not going to drive 6 hours to go learn about hydraulic ventilation, right? Because I feel like I've probably got a pretty good grasp on that.
Right. But I guess my point is this: the decision's being made by one person and not just simply asking who's willing to go where or who's willing to do what or who's willing to sit down and do this. It's just a unilateral decision like, nope, we did it. Nope, it's too far. Nope, it's too hard. Nope, we tried it. Nope, nope, nope. And it's like, okay, you don't want to do it.
But
Is
somebody
it?
else might.
Is anyone else interested?
Yeah, there's probably somebody somewhere that's interested in doing that. I think about I hear lots of departments grumble that, nobody comes to training, blah blah blah, and we have dismal turnout for our department trainings, and I think and I'm like, we're not. I wouldn't say we're stellar. I don't know what stellar attendance is, but you know we we probably on a roster of 70 people have 25 show up for a normal training night. Wow, that was loud. So that
I don't think
25,
that's a HIPAA violation
yeah,
because no one knows where
what's
621 was growing.
yeah. So you've got 25 people out of 70 showing up. That's not half. It's a little more than a third, right?
Well,
Is that good enough? Yeah, I think that's an acceptable amount considering everybody else has a life, right?
here's the one thing I'll add just so people have a little more of a spectrum to view this in. So in 2023, we had, was it 263 or 283 hours?
And I think we offered 263 that we offered as training in department training.
So a membership of 70 has a course of the spectrum of a year, 263 hours of training to pick from. For our requirement, a 24 hours for the year. So basically 10%.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean,
And we were 3,000 ish hours consumed, right?
something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you can sit there at face value and sit there and say, well, Jesus, you claim to have 70 people on your department and only 20 show up for training. Right. For that night of 52 weeks of 260 hours available with 70 people divided by 3,000 hours consumed. So put it into perspective. Um, I'm pretty sure when I sit there and say that they'll do it, yeah, it turns out they will.
Yeah.
And if you have that much of a variety of training, quite frankly, the feat to actually have 20 people show up is quite frankly pretty impressive. Um, when you put it under the goggles of being volunteer. Um, and on a quick side note, oddly enough, it turns out that if you actually offer quality training, people show up to it.
Yeah.
Kind of
No.
weird how that works.
Yeah. If your idea of training is dominoes at the table, like you're going to get the domino players. But if you do like legitimate training that's I, CPR class, that's a simple, stupid, no brainer one, right?
Right.
That everybody needs. Like that's one that gets huge turnout, and it's just part of the deal. You got to have something that one they want or need, or they feel like they need, or it's got to be something that's interesting enough that it piques the curiosity. It can't just be, you know, whatever's in compartment number 3 on the engine every week. It's got to be more than just the same old, same old, same old, day in and day out, week in and week out. It's got to be intriguing. It's got to be good. It's got to be planned, right? Can't just show up on Tuesday night at 6:45 for training at 7 and expect that whatever you put out there is going to be worth a shit, because it's not.
Right. Well, and here's the one thing I always try and bridge this gap. Uh every now and then there's things you got to cover that are just frankly boring. You know, uh they're not awesome. They're boring, but you got to do it. Uh Kind of a classic example for us is every year we always have an attack from the black class. Don't get weird or dirty on this. Okay, the fact of the matter is it's a wild land firefighting term here in Texas. And it's always just talking about making sure you position the apparatus so you always stay in the burned area. And if you need to bail out of there or it gets hairy, at least you're in an area of burned wildland situation. Everyone knows the mantra on this. Okay, so we voted on 3 new people in the month. They have a lot to learn here. Realistically, though, the other 70 members, they don't have too much to pick up from that because it's just a decree, a motto, a standard for us. So, regardless, we got to cover it, but it's not necessarily a very popular topic. And chances are turnout's going to be low on that night.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is, and it's that classic, you get out of it what you put in it. You know, I harken back to a time when I've listened to all these people tell me all these excuses of, well, these people won't do it here, and we can't find volunteers, and we can't, and it's always the can't, right? And can't. My granddad used to say, "Can't never could," and
Yeah.
that's kind of a prolific statement in my life. Like I was a child being told can't never could, and it got eliminated from the old vocabulary pretty early on because you didn't want to get called out for it. And I think if more people kind of had their grandpa telling them that as a child, they might realize that you can do some crap if you put effort into it.
Right.
You know, it's not easy, and it's not free, and it's not fun sometimes, but it's doable.
I think for me, a lot of it comes down to I'm going to probably screw up the analogy or the example, but you're the third monkey that showed up to the ark and it's starting to rain. You better know how to fight.
Yeah,
Okay.
or at least look like a zebra.
Right. And in that exact scenario, and along the lines with the story, can't, won't, shouldn't, tried, these aren't excuses. I mean, I'm sorry if you are really adamant about trying to make your organization to survive and grow and develop and become, for lack of better words, at least a local standard of success. These are not words you use.
You have to eliminate it completely from the vocabulary, right? It can't be part of what you ever say. You can say, we can sure give that a try. Don't know how it's going to work out, but we'll try it. We'll try anything once.
About the only example that I'll take is we've exhausted all resources. We did X, Y, and Z, and we proved that this doesn't work. Okay, fine.
What will?
So, what did you change to try and solve the problem? Because if you didn't change to something else, you're right back at couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't, and it's just obfuscation. You're finding excuses for you to try and not succeed. And you're taking the short way out. And I'm sorry, that's really terrible to say. And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. And I'm sorry if that makes you really mad. But oddly enough, you're in the fire service and we champion that there's more way than one way to solve a problem, and yet you're digging in that we only tried one thing and it didn't work. So obviously everyone else around me's stupid, and we can just bail on this and close the organization.
Yeah. I I don't buy any of that as the truth ever, right? I I remember when at my previous department, and the story was is we can't do fundraising. Doesn't work. We can't. And and listened to this for right at a year, and I was like, "Hey, why don't you let me try? Why don't you just give me a shot at trying and see, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe you're correct, but let me try. You have nothing to lose by letting me try." Tried, and I'm not going to say it was overwhelming success, but it was enough of success that all the folks that said that's not going to work went, "Hey, wait a minute, that might actually work if we helped kind of put some effort into it and you weren't doing it by yourself." Because it worked good enough that it wasn't a loss, right? And that's kind of a pretty good stepping off point. It wasn't a loss.
Right. And I mean, one thing I'll step off in here is, and I know people have heard this in the past, is that, well, I'll be chief, but I won't do the politics. And it's like, what on earth are you talking about? I mean, now I'm I get to lay claim credit to this, but the fact of the matter is that I don't get to lay claim to even close to 100%, much less 75% of this. When I took over as chief, we were a $500,000 department. Today, we're starting year 5, so 4 complete years. We're $1 million department with $250,000 in grants, probably more coming in, and $100,000 county subsidy. Uh, what are you talking about? Go do politics. It, how'd you get elected?
Politics.
Politics. Go do your actual job. Go do it. Stop giving me excuses. And I mean, you'd have to know me to understand I'm 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 kosher. I know how to talk to these people, but there's still an argument to be made. I don't have a family member in city council or county court. I there was a lot of groundwork that had to be done. Um, and to sit there and use the excuse that I don't do politics, man, another unpopular opinion. Then step down and get someone in there that'll actually do the job. Because the fact of the matter is being a chief's not about wearing a white hat and pointing to people on scene. That's 5% of what you do.
Well, and the reality is if you're doing as good a job as you can do as chief, you've got other people that can point on scene.
Well, yeah. Now, that's a big part of kind of how I operate is that I truly think if you want to be able to maximize your personnel's potential, then you encourage them to run with it. And right, wrong, or indifferent, you support them. They have an idea, you run with it. They want to do something, that you do it. If they want to pursue something, you pursue it. Here's the pro tip. You give them unemphatic 100% credit for it.
Yeah.
Do not do the single most damning stupid thing you can do and take credit for it. Don't do that.
Yeah. The the gamut of excuses for all the different things, and it runs far and wide, and we were talking about this earlier. It's what the perpetual uh come on now, help me on this, perpetual pessimistic dinosaur, right?
It was something like that, but
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, the perpetual pessimistic dinosaur. So you've got that mentality, and it breeds more of that mentality that you just can't succeed. And the fact is that you can succeed. It's just a matter of will and determination, right? It's you've got to have the determination to succeed. You got to have the will to see it through, and you've got to have the vision to have the idea in the first place.
Right. Well, people think I'm kidding when I say this. Spite is one of the most powerful motivating factors on the face of the earth. Uh, I can't tell you how screwed you are when you tell me that we can't do that, or that's not possible, or it's too far, or we tried that, because I swear to God, I'm going to put every fiber of my being into proving you wrong. Um, Sometimes at my detriment, sometimes at my detriment. Uh, and good, bad, or indifferent, uh, I'm exceedingly competitive, and I'm not going to sit there and let someone tell me that because it didn't work in 1921 or 1937 or 1978,
Or for that matter, 2022,
right,
right?
that it's not going to work today. And I just, I'm not going to put up with that. And I'm going to make a point of making it work just to prove the point. Now, again, how much time, energy, and effort did you actually put into trying to prove that person wrong? Sometimes that's a detriment, and it turns out that the project wasn't worth it just again because of pride. And I think that's we don't have to talk about pride right now. I think that's a good thing to end on. But pride's something that a chief shouldn't have until you've earned it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And I want to run down the list of some of the things that I've been told through the years of, and you got the story about the fundraising, but I I've heard department leaders tell me we can't find people. And you ask them, "Well, what have you done?" "Well, we ran an ad in the paper." "Okay, so there's no 75-year-old widow women that want to join your fire department." "Okay, that's fine. Even though we could probably use those people."
I'm going to interject real quick. It just means your messaging was wrong. Because if you would have actually written the article correctly, you probably would have had 12 show up.
Well, and these guys are talking about a help wanted ad, right? It
Hmm.
it just doesn't. It's not the right thing. And then I've heard, you know, people won't give their time to do blah 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 blah, but yet they'll give all the time in the world to the department. I watch them do it all the time. I mean, you got guys that are literally living at these fire stations, working on stuff, running calls. Like they're given all the time in the world that they have, to the point of divorce and everything else that goes along with it. And that's not a good thing, but don't tell me they won't give their time to do something, because they will. You just got to figure it out. Like, what's more important? Do you achieve a goal that's better for the organization, a long-term goal, or do you let them spend all their time changing the oil, and or hire somebody to change the damn oil?
Right. Well, but I mean, and I know we've talked about this in the past, and I don't know what the depth, but again, if you treat the fire department like a Libyan salt mine and you give people the little hoe and a 3-inch candle to go into the ground, and you expect to see them in 14 hours with 47 metric tons of salt, I mean, you're going to get what you're given. And shockingly, if anything, you get clubbed to death with the hoe and the candles thrown on you.
Yeah.
So don't sit there and create the most ridiculous. I hate to use the word toxic because it's such a stupid word today, but it's actually appropriate. If no one wants to be at the organization, then don't be shocked that no one's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of gotta one, and I say it all the time. We're asking for someone to give us their most valuable, non-returnable resource, right?
Yeah, arguably the single most precious thing that any of us have. And here's the kicker, whether you're Jeff Bezos or an infant, we all have the same commodity,
Time.
time.
It is time. That's what we're after. Is their time. It's the time that we're going to turn into effort. It's the time we're going to turn into calls. It's all this time, right? And so if we're not getting the most out of that time and that time is not enjoyable and rewarding for that individual, why in the world would they do it?
Right. It's just there's no reason.
Yeah.
There's no reason. If you happen to have a group of people that happen to hang out at the department, it's not necessarily because they enjoy the organization. It's because they enjoy each other.
Yeah.
They're buddies. They like to spend time with each other, and you got to put a value on that. Do you have a small group of young men and women that are hanging out at the department? Because they sure could be at a bar,
Yeah.
you
Where they
know,
do you no good.
where they do you no good. Do you have a handful of older men and women that are hanging out at the department? Same thing. There's a lot of other people, a lot of other places those people could be, but they're there. You are misrepresenting the value of the single most precious commodity on the face of the earth,
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And there's only X amount of it. You got me on the wrong camera. There we go. Maybe one more over to the 4. Yeah. Folks, you gotta live with us through this.
Something
The
happened.
the challenge of the technology is real, right? So you're looking at Matt, but you're listening to me because we've got to figure all this out. But
Right. I think what we need to do is do a quick technical break and then we'll come back.
yeah, and
I think we're good to go.
we're back.
So somehow or another, that was one push of a button and we're back. Uh, but yeah, it's just time. And there's something that Jesse says all the time. And the more it's not that I always didn't realize it, but the more I see it, the more I accept it. And there's always a lot of crap you say.
Yeah,
But in this one, it's very true. The more you give the volunteers, the more they're going to do. It's not the opposite.
yeah, yeah. It's truly not, and it's something I realized fairly early on, right? Like if we ask them to do all these things, they're gonna figure out how to make it happen because one, they don't want to let each other down. They don't want to let the department down. They don't want to let the public down. They don't want to they don't want to be seen as a failure. So don't don't let your bias as leadership in what you think they will or will not do interfere with the reality of what they will or will not do. Because I assure you, it's a lot more than you think they'll do.
Right. The one thing I'll add to this is that uh and I'm going to say this from my own personal perspective. I am not a billboard newspaper headliner kind of guy. I have more personal satisfaction out of getting something done and moving on to the next project. I don't need the recognition. I could care less. But the one thing you can't do is take credit for my work.
Yeah,
That's like for me, that's an unforgiven, like irrevocable sin. Do not take credit for my work. Don't do it.
Now, I might give you credit for my work. That I do that periodically for folks, and I'll give them more credit than what they technically put effort in. That
Sure,
I
but at
pushed
that
it
point,
along.
right, but at that point it's a motivation factor on your part.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can give more credit, but don't take more credit.
Right.
Right.
And what this segues into really cleanly is, particularly from my perspective, if you're chief, if you're doing anything for the recognition or for the praise or for the acknowledgement, I would argue to realign your priorities.
Well, I I'm gonna just put this out there. Like we're at a meeting here the other day with it's a state level meeting, and our department's getting praise and I'm getting acknowledged for, and it's literally choking me up, right? I feel the lump in my throat. I get all warm and fuzzy. Like, if you're not getting that from an uninitiated, like, random compliment, something's wrong with you. You shouldn't be trying to make that happen. It should just happen because you did the right thing. And
Right, but I'm going to add something here real quick. So there's a big difference between an organic interaction that was, don't get me wrong, well intended, and you could arguably say at the end of the day that that's the intent, is to objective, standard, goal met, and get the classic head pat. There's nothing wrong with that. Unequivocally, nothing wrong with that. The thing that I would add is that the true validation and the true reward occurs when it is organic.
yes,
Uh, and when you set out with X, Y, and Z, and it turned out, by God, you made a difference. Uh, and it does get recognized. That's that's the reward, is saying, Jesus, God, we spent a lot of time on this. Was it worth it? 6 months later, it turned out it was. Even if it is that one time that you get that organic exposure and recognition. And this is what goes back to me saying, don't steal someone else's work, because you completely invalidate that.
yeah,
Um, and you rob that person of that experience. And it's just, literally, it's not fair. They're the ones that put all the time, energy, and effort into it. They should be recognized for all their hard work, like you and like Gene with our little district here in Texas. God almighty. I just, unless you're in our district or familiar with our state agency of SFFMA, you'd have no clue to realize how bad our district was. And I mean bad. We're talking like roadkill, ground into the asphalt, blew away, rained on, froze over. You're not even a stain anymore. And you made us relevant in a really short amount of time. And then on top of that, it wasn't just relevancy. Turns out you're a flicker of hope. And all I can say is that if I tried to steal any of that, that makes me a bastard.
yeah.
And that's
Well,
the truth.
and the whole relevancy and all that and the flicker of hope. It's more about the hope side of it, I guess. You know, you're
Ooh,
trying.
ooh, let me interject
Go
here.
ahead.
Cut in. Okay. Uh, this goes to something I've said for a long time. Me, you, and Gene are all the classic workhorses. You know, one's a quarter horse, one's a thoroughbred, and one's a racehorse. Okay. But in Who's Who, I have no
Can
clue.
I be the Shetland?
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm definitely not the thoroughbred. uh, but the magic here that happened was is that all three of us ended up on the same team, which is the rare thing. And uh, where I'm going with this is we have the ability to magically make a lot of things happen, and we did something noble. It's working for us. Why don't you try it?
Yeah. Well, and I'd argue that the nobility of it, unless there's truly a benefit to you on the back end, at some point, doing something strictly for the nobility of it is not usually the wisest thing, right?
No, they yeah.
It's a noble thing.
Cherokees called that the Trail of 10,000 Tears.
Yeah. So there has to be, it has to be equitable. There has to be a benefit to you or your organization for it. For us, it's our organization. Like, it affords us some things that that we wouldn't have if we hadn't gone down this road. Like, it gets us some opportunities that just we wouldn't have had. Uh, Most of that revolves around certifications and testing and some of that stuff that was truly kind of a motivating factor for us. Hey, we need this to happen. How do we make this happen? Well, it turns out the way we make it happen is we do it, right?
Right.
And alongside of that, it provides a benefit to the others around us.
Well, again, I would argue for the core of me, it goes down to the spite factor. We're surrounded 2 years ago. We're surrounded by people that say you're doomed, volunteerism's dead, this is pointless, there's no reason to continue to operate this way, you're failures, you're you're not a community service, there's no true benefit to being volunteer, on and on. And I mean, I'm sorry. And you are more welcome to reach out to me. I'll show you the benefits of our organization. And quite frankly, I'll show you the strength of volunteer. Uh, People are misinterpreting, misunderstanding, misutilizing their volunteer organizations to a level that's just it's a missed opportunity. And we have something right now that's so special. And here's the craziest thing, because we started this podcast, we found a handful of other organizations. They got it together. Like, volunteerism's not dead. There are people that are actively striving to make their departments not just better, not make their communities better, not just save their taxpayers money, but to take their organizations to an unprecedented level for the comparison of volunteer. And I just, again, this podcast, the whole purpose of this is just to reach out and talk to people and get people to realize, like, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
You just you got to build your team and do some things, and some real magic happens.
Yeah. And with that, Matt, I think that's a good kind of point to put a fork in it and call it good. Again, we did the video thing on this one. You may or may not ever see it. We'll figure that out later. For us, it's practice for the video stuff for the most part. Uh, and as always, we don't profess to have all the answers. We just we literally are a couple schmucks that had some ideas that worked out, right? And some of these ideas we knew in our heart of hearts were going to work out.
Right.
But some of them are on the verge of harebrained, right? And it's not always gonna it's not always gonna work that way. But I assure you, if you go into it with the attitude that it's not gonna work, guess what? Not gonna work. You know, if 75% of the department says it's not gonna work, there's a chance that 25%'s right.
Right.
Yeah. So go for it, right? You've got to you got to hang it out there. You never gain anything by continuing to do the same old, same old.
Right. You know, the very last thing I'll close with is this. Take whatever pride you have, rip it out, throw it on the ground, and just start stomping on it. Take a project, find success, and dust the pride off, and go ahead and put on your Junior Woodchuck badge of awesomeness. But don't let pride get in the way of something that's potentially very beneficial for you and your organization. Don't get myopic, don't get tunnel vision, be open, and don't sit there and use the can't not, should not, won't not, too far excuse, because that's what it is. And just, there's nothing wrong with taking credit for work done, but you got to do the work first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else, Jesse?
That sums it up pretty well. And again, hit that YouTube, help us out. We are we are excited about this opportunity coming up in June. We definitely want all of you to at a bare minimum tune in and watch the live stream, right? If you're in Texas or close to Texas, you want to come down there. It's end of June 20
7th?
something like that. We're on Saturday. That Saturday that's around the 24th to the 27th, maybe the 26th. I'd look it up, but there's no point at this point. But you know, get your hotel room, come on down, be in the audience, be a part of what's the movement that's kind of springboarding some life back into a lot of things.
Right. And the other part of this is there'll be a live stream function. And for the love of God, if we could get someone from our European audience, our Australian audience, or our Asian, I think there's even a handful in like South Africa.
Yeah.
God, if you feel froggy and you want to bounce in there and say hello from wherever, please do. We're going to keep talking about it. We'll try. We don't have a link yet, but we'll try and give you a better heads up. Again, June 27th through the 30th. I'm almost positive that's the day. We're presenting on Saturday. Uh, with that,
Well, here, let me just take half a second. We're 27th through the 30th. We will be live on the 29th,
what time?
10 a.m. Central Standard
Central
Time.
Standard Time.
So 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on June 27th will be the live. We may do some live tests in between now and then, that just to make sure we've got the technology worked out and we know how to do it. But other than that, we'll stay on the path that we're on with the audio. May trickle some video in here and there just to make sure we know how to operate our stuff.
Yeah. Big deal, big times, big things. It's February, and I assure you, June's too close. That said, we've got our typical ending note. Shoot us an email at tastelikeBurningcast@gmail. Give us a like or a subscribe on Patreon. We'll shoot you some stickers. We'll try and drag you into the podcast. If you feel like being a member of the podcast or a panel discussion, please just shoot us an email. We'll get you on there. And as always, we're looking for likes and reminders and subscriptions on YouTube, because that's truly where we got to grow. This is Matt.
This Jesse.
Have a good evening.